Iran this morning accusing the U.S. of nuclear blackmail. This as President Obama pushed for stronger sanctions against the country during a 47-country nuclear security summit. But still, no actual action against Iran. So, do we need to get tougher? Lisa Daftari is a journalist and Iranian expert, and she's kind enough to join us this morning for some instant reaction on what has taken place. Lisa, what was accomplished this weekend as it relates to Iran getting nukes?
Well, you know, it depends on what the Obama agenda was. If it was action, there was a lot of action. But if there was, you know, activity rather, there was a lot of activity, but rather less action. The irony of the entire thing is that the premise of this conference was to talk about the growth in nuclear terrorism, or the chances of Al-Qaeda or any other terrorist organization getting their hands on nukes. But Iran, the greatest exporter of terrorism on this planet, was both absent from the summit and absent from the agenda. You mentioned before, right before we went on the air, that people feel let down twice. What do you mean? People of Iran. You know, the people of Iran, I mean, there's two fronts on which, we're looking at Iran right now. There's the nuclear issue. Iran is obviously working towards becoming a nuclear power. And then there's the people of Iran who have become completely disenchanted with their government and are obviously, since the election last June, have made it very obvious to the international community about their disenchantment with their government. They looked to the United States and the allies for support during the demonstrations, and they were let down. We dropped the ball in terms of supporting them in their initiative. And now again during the summit, it was more like a parade or a show to the Iranian people where, 47 strong countries came together. These are, responsible countries, and, a lot was done not to discredit the summit. But on the other hand, we don't need to be looking at Ukraine and Mexico. We need to be looking at Iran, who is an emerging nuclear power, and that wasn't done.
Well, Lisa, here's where it gets a little complicated. The studies show, if I'm to believe these polls, that the Iranian people want their nation to become a nuclear power. So could this, in one respect, almost bring the country and government together?
It's a very touchy subject for a lot of Iranians. If you ask an Iranian point blank, do you think your country should have nuclear weapons? Well, that becomes a patriotic issue. And Iranians are patriotic at the core, but they're Iranian at the core. And this regime is not an Iranian regime to them. A regime that will turn against its people. The people aren't going to trust this regime to have nuclear powers because it could use it against its own people. Obviously, the country is torn and it's not united right now. So what would stop this regime from turning on its own people?
Now, from what you can ascertain, we had Secretary Gates come out and he basically said all options are on the table, essentially saying what President Bush said for 8 years, that we're not ruling out military action. Is military action something the Iranian people legitimately fear? Because if you listen to Ahmadinejad, he feels as though we don't have the guts to do it.
It is something that the Iranian people fear, and obviously most people are against the Iranians and people, Iranian Americans as well. They don't want the innocent people of Iran hurt. But what we have to acknowledge is that Iran will become a nuclear power. If not this year, maximum in 2 years, Iran will become a nuclear power. That's no surprise. And worse than that, it will set off a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. The Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, they'll all want to have nuclear power. And what the United States has to acknowledge is that if they do not want to have the military option still on the table, then we have to take serious measures, and we have to take them now. And we have to consider Iran's becoming a nuclear power a priority on the global agenda right now.
And Lisa, real quick, I just want your opinion. Why is it that we only seem to see the urgency in this, and perhaps France? If everyone else is going to be affected, why are we carrying the ball?
That's a very good question. Why are we carrying the ball? Well, why did President Obama call this summit? I think it's something that the world is just standing by, and we, the United States took the initiative. When President Obama was campaigning, he said he wants to take negotiating measures with Iran, and he has taken the initiative. But unfortunately, we've seen very little action, and that's, the predicament is only going to get worse.
And perhaps the fact that we tried to talk make it seem as weakness instead of a strength. Lisa Daftari, thanks for your great work. Thanks for sharing your insight. We'll continue to call on you if that's okay.